Started. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Mei Vang, and I'm with the Fish and Wildlife, DNR's Fish and Wildlife Outreach section. And welcome to the 210th episode of the Minnesota Outdoors and Skills and Stewardship Series. Here in Minnesota, we are very lucky to not only be in the land of 10,000 lakes, but we are also surrounded by very, very beautiful landscapes. So, from prairies to wetlands to hardwood forests. And today I'm really excited to have two special guests from our Scientific and Natural Areas unit to come and share a little bit more about some of these special places that we have here right in Minnesota. And we have Kelly Randall. We also have Judy Elbert. And I am actually just going to go ahead and start, have them just switch it right over to them and have them introduce a little bit about themselves, what their roles are within the DNR, and then they can share a little bit more about these special places. So with that, go ahead, Kelly, you can go ahead and get us started.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Kelly Randall. I am the statewide outreach consultant for Minnesota Scientific and Natural Areas. I've been with the DNR for over 30 years and a majority of that time with this program. My role includes outreach as it relates to communications, our website, our social media, as well as helping coordinate volunteers. I want to give my supervisor a chance to introduce herself, Judy Elbert. Judy, do you want to give a shout out?
Open, I think Judy might
Sorry.
be
Yep, I got
muted.
it.
Okay.
Of course, I had to do that. My name is Judy Albert, as Kelly and May mentioned. I am the statewide Scientific and Natural Areas Unit Supervisor. I have been with the DNR for, I think I'm at maybe my 17, 18-year mark, and I've been with the Scientific and Natural Areas Unit in different capacities for the last 16 years. And I am sort of like a background image today. Kelly's taken us forward with the presentation, but I'll be available during our Q&A section. I'll hand it back to Kelly.
Great. So we want to tell you a little bit about Minnesota's scientific and natural areas. These are areas that preserve Minnesota's unique nature. Natural areas are exceptional places where native plants and animals flourish, where rare species are protected, and where we can study and know Minnesota's fascinating natural features. Established in 1969, natural areas protect the last remaining habitat for Minnesota's rarest plants and animals. Examples include world-class peatlands, such as the Red Lake peatland in the far northern reaches of the state, old-growth pine forests. This is the Lost 40 SNA, which is also in the northern part of Minnesota. Habitat for prairie chickens, as seen here in bluestem prairie SNA, which is in the Fargo-Moorhead area. And oak savanna, a habitat found at St. Croix Savanna SNA, which is south of Stillwater, Minnesota. Lake Superior cobble beaches. Example here is Ionis Beach. And native prairie. This example of native prairie bank is found along the bump in Minnesota at Big Stone Lake. Uncommon forests, such as the Yellow Birch Natural Area Registry site. This site is within Tedegooch State Park. Scientific and Natural Areas has a program goal of ensuring that Minnesota's natural heritage is not lost from any ecological region of the state. How do we do this? Through land protection, such as acquisition or leases, donations, conservation easements, registry agreements, and assistance with tax incentives. We also use management techniques such as prescribed burns, invasive species control, habitat enhancements, and plant community restorations on sites that we own. Minnesota has 170 scientific and natural areas and around 125 native prairie bank conservation easements that total over 200,000 acres. They preserve a wide range of Minnesota's native species and natural systems across all of our ecological regions, from the southwest prairies all the way through to the mixed forest of the northern woods. These natural areas are exceptionally valuable for scientific research, such as this study of skinks, a rare lizard, that's found at our Blue Devil Valley SNA, which is along the Minnesota River in southwestern Minnesota. Preserving biodiversity, which is the variety of life and its processes, such as this found at Pine and Curry Island SNA. This site is found in Lake of the Woods. Engaging Minnesota's citizens, such as you folks, like this photography workshop at Cottonwood River SNA in southern Minnesota. And the solitude that accompanies a trip to a natural area, like this visit to Lake Alexander Woods Scientific and Natural Area in central Minnesota. Natural areas are found throughout Minnesota. One is likely near your home. Most all are open to visit and enjoy, including Birdside Islands SNA, seen here, up near Ely. When visiting, we simply ask that you do not disturb plants and animals, leave the rocks and other features as you find them, help us prevent invasive species from spreading into natural areas, and to follow the rules. All of our rules can be found online and posted at each natural area. Activities that do not disturb natural conditions are encouraged, such as photography, bird watching, hiking, snowshoeing. And we encourage you to get involved and find these wild places. We have an online event calendar, which will be placed in the chat, and you can see some of the upcoming events as early as this coming Saturday, all the way through into November. You can volunteer with us on some of our stewardship events or some of our interpretive events. We'd be excited if you'd like to get our newsletter. That's a quarterly newsletter we put out. Maybe even consider a donation to the program. Or tell a friend about us. We tend to be a program that a lot of folks are not familiar with, and we'd love to let people know more about what we are and what we do. And with that, I'd like to thank you from the Scientific and Natural Areas Unit. And just to mention here, our website and our email address are right there if you'd like to get in touch with us directly. And that the Environmental and Natural Resources Trust Fund funds projects like this outreach project. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Oh, oops. Sorry, I was muted. But thank you, Kelly. Judy, did you have anything else that you'd like to add?
I don't have anything additional. I just encourage everyone to learn more about SNAs and try to visit a few.
Perfect.
I
All
did
right, well,
have
thank you.
one other thing
Oh,
I'd like to add. I didn't realize, I think one of my slides skipped to note that many of our sites often don't have trails or facilities or things along those lines. So just be prepared when you do come to us, visit a site.
okay. Perfect. Are there that is also another question is to if there aren't if some of the places don't have like trails or anything like that, are there as far as like access, are there areas where you can park? Is that pretty clearly marked or
Uh, Most of our sites have some place to park. Sometimes it is a parking area. There may be sites out maybe in the prairie area that are parking along a road, and the website describes how directions and how to get to each one, and
okay.
where parking is recommended. Some sites
Okay.
it's tricky because we have some sites in the far northern part of the state that are uh, just very challenging to get to.
Sure. And
I
so
would
for those, oh, go
I would
ahead,
also
Judy.
note that we do have some virtual hikes and videos for some of our sites too, if people just want to check them out online.
Oh, great. Okay. And can they just find that right on the SNA website as well?
Yes, exactly. You can find for the sites that do have those virtual tours, they're on the page for that site, and we also have a page that's dedicated to that shows all of the different videos showing um, uh, what the sites look like and feel like, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. There are a couple questions. So again, reminder that if you do have questions for Kelly or Judy, you can go ahead and drop those in the Q&A. There's one question from Lee, and Lee asks, "Are dogs allowed in SNA?"
That's a very good question. A good place to look is our rules page to find what sites do allow dogs, and some sites allow dogs on a leash. Others that are allowed for hunting during hunting season. So looking at each site will tell you whether or not dogs are allowed. And as a caveat to that, I mentioned hunting. Again, also some SNAs are open to hunting. If you look at that rules page, it can tell you which sites are open and what kind of hunting is allowed.
Great. And let's see. Lee also asks, "Are there any ongoing research?"
Yes, we have research going on our sites pretty much every year. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Maybe Judy, you can help me out, or we may be able to just reach back out to you too to provide some ideas of current research. I know within the last few years there had been some research done on a native prairie plant called partridge pea. There'd been some interest in researchers on looking at that plant. Um,
I can jump in too. Like
yes, please.
we issue like over 100 research permits a year on scientific and natural areas, and some of the research we're even utilizing, as Kelly said, the Environment Natural Resource Trust Fund to learn more about the effectiveness of our own management. So we've been doing cool season grass control research. We've been doing a lot of inventory of rare enlisted species. Um, it just really ranges all the way up to, research permits that come in from external researchers that, really don't correlate directly to us, but it's correlating to other research.
Yeah, and research from researchers from all over the United States and I think even beyond. Good
Yeah.
question. Thank you.
Even like lichen research, like we get, you know, lichen research. So.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to learn more about some of those unique research that are happening at each of those. If you are just someone that is visiting, and let's say you're not like from within the DNR or another agency, how would you get more information about like the research that's happening at these places?
One method would be to subscribe to our newsletter. We do occasionally have what we call a research roundup that's I think once or twice a year that talks about ongoing research or findings that have been found, I guess, on sites. That probably would be the easiest method for people to kind of keep in tune with what research is being done on our sites.
Okay. And then we talked about this a little bit already, but maybe Kelly came in a little bit later, but if you can just remind us again what the rules about dogs at SNAs are.
Sure, sure. The rules for dogs vary by site, and so the best method to find out which site allows hunting, I mean, dogs or hunting, is to look on the website. We have some sites that allow dogs on a leash, other sites that allow dogs for hunting purposes, but a majority of our sites do not allow dogs. So maybe that's a good way of phrasing it. If when in doubt, dogs aren't allowed, but there are sites that do allow them.
A
Okay,
good
and then
general rule of thumb when it comes to SNA sites is that each of them are individual, and so you need to look at the rules for each specific site before you go.
Yeah.
just a great reminder from Carl is to please pick up dog poop if you are at an SNA. So
Yes,
thank you,
please.
Carl, for the great reminder. That's a great way to help preserve these special places. So thank you
Exactly.
for that. Yeah. Um, David asks, can Kelly and Judy, can you tell us your personal favorites and why? I know we just had a discussion about this and there's so many, but if you had to pick a couple or one, what would you pick and why?
Do you want to go first, Judy?
Sure. When I was asked earlier, I said the same thing. I spent the good portion of my career in the SNA unit working for our private lands conservation easements. Kelly noted those in his presentation, the native prairie bank easements. And so I have like a fond spot in my heart for those. And so I would list some of our native prairie banks in Redwood County. We have some just really hidden gems. But outside of that, I really enjoy the Lost 40. I enjoy Cedar Mountain, SNA, and if you get up into the prairie region in the Northwest, I really like the Felton and Blue Stem prairies. So I kind of like to drip into the different kinds because we have different kinds. We have our coastal sites, we have our forest sites, we have our prairie sites, and I kind of have a favorite in each type.
That's a good way to put it.
Mhm.
Mine is a little more complicated. I mentioned we have 170 sites throughout the state. I have personally visited all but 5 of those. One of my goals before I retire is to try and reach all of them. Uh, I have seen some of the very, very remote peatland sites in the far northern part of the state, the beautiful wide open prairies in the south and southeast part of the state. The blufflands in the southeast are phenomenal. I am in the metro area, and there's some amazing sites just a few minutes out of the heart of downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul. Um, and to try and pick a favorite, I think what I'll settle on is partly just because it's new. Our Icelandite coastal fen on the North Shore in the far north of Grand Marais is a spectacular sight to see, and it's well worth a trip up there. So I'll leave it at that.
Great. I know it is really hard. It's kind of like the same question as what's your favorite animal? Like if you
Right.
were, what? So that's pretty hard, but thank you for sharing that. William asked, are there plans to expand and grow the SNA program?
Yeah, so we have an acquisition plan, and we're always looking for new sites that meet our acquisition goals, which are to protect representative samples of plant communities, native plant communities, and rare species. And so we still have goals to meet those what we've targeted as the program's plan for meeting our statutorial goals. And we're actively out looking for potential parcels.
Okay. Can people approach the DNR if they think that there's a rare place that they would like to have possibly turned into an SNA?
Absolutely, we encourage that.
Okay. Great. And then Christina asks, are there tools to keep us from spreading invasive species?
That's a really good question. Thanks for asking. Most of our sites that have an access point, like a parking area, should also have a boot brush where you can use to get any mud or plants off of your shoes before you enter a site. If you can do that at home, that's even better. There are boot brushes that you can find, I think, at any kind of or even if you just have like a little foot brush to get the seeds and mud off your boots before you enter a site. And then it's also good when you do leave a site to brush them off again, like any time you go outdoors, because that'll help prevent spreading to other areas, whether or not it's a natural area. So those are great tools to utilize. And also just, maybe be checking your clothing before you come in. If you've washed your clothing, you should be good. But, if your jacket might have a few burrs on, something like that, that you want to make sure you pick off before you come. Things like that would be helpful.
Okay, and I sorry, I should clarify. So, Christina did ask about AIS, so I assume that's aquatic invasive species
Right.
too.
Yeah. Uh, a lot of our sites would follow the same rules as if you were entering a public water access to drain your boat, those kinds of things. Um, I'm trying to think, and Judy, can you help me here of uh, I was trying to think of like how many sites that we have that have um, lake access or lake shore. Um, there are some, but most of our sites have, like, what I'm thinking of are sites that are completely, there may be a lake or a wetland in them. They're completely surrounded by the SNA. So the access is actually by land. It's not by water. So
Yeah, and we do have a few sites, but it's very, again, site specific. Some of them don't allow boat access and some of them do. Um, and it's usually like canoe access. But again, I would have to look up each specific site. I don't have them all memorized either, Kelly. Um, but yeah, we don't, as far as I know, we don't have any like boat launch areas. If anything, it's just like canoe launch. Um, and it'd be site specific and they would each have rules.
Okay, great, thank you. Liz asked, is the difference in SNAs versus state parks more about preserving the SNA as they are without any development? I guess I'm
yes.
wondering about how SNAs differ from other state areas.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's you're spot on. Scientific and natural areas are meant to be the primary goal is preserving the native habitat on them. So they don't have facilities. You won't find restrooms. You won't find buildings. Um, uh, uh, some don't even have a parking area. Um, and where state park often have native plant communities and natural areas in them, but there are also areas where they're also meant for recreation and for uh, um, uh, they have more development. Um, so that would be kind of the main difference between a state park and a natural area. Judy, do you have anything more to add?
I would just add, like we often say that, SNAs are the highest form of protection that you can put on something. And so it's really the goal is to protect the rare features there, the rare plants, the rare animals. And so you will see less recreational use in general on SNAs than you would on other public land unit types.
Yeah, but they are public lands open
Mhm.
for use for
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and then just a really a reminder is that on the SNA website that was shared in the link, it is by you can find the location by map, but there's also um, a list, and if you click on it, there's lots of different like information about the specific SNA. So that's also a great way to look about like access or just seeing highlights that you can see there. Tom asked, do SNAs allow students to visit for research or observation, provided that they don't remove any plants or animals? So for example, could water be testing on site or counting bugs in a net?
So if you are interested in doing research on a site, we ask you to apply for a research permit. Part of the reason is, if you are collecting that, we want to know about that. Even if you're not collecting something on the site, we'd like to know what are you working on, and be able to help. We might be able to provide some guidance. There may be management activities going on the site that you might not be aware of, and we could help inform you of that information. Um, so if you're thinking of doing research, it helps us, and it may help you also to be able to apply for a research permit. And they're um, they're not too onerous to fill out. And I believe our our standard is that we uh, um, try and get those applications processed in like 30 days. So you might have to think a little ahead to do it, but it hope the intent is that it's helping both you and us to be able to understand uh, all the different research that might be done on a site.
Okay, and then I
The
think
same
I
would
see.
the same would go for a public event too. Like if you're going to be
Yes.
bringing
Yeah.
more people to a site, you should be applying for a permit too.
Yeah. We have.
That just helps us make sure that we can evaluate the circumstance of that request and handle it the best way we can for each site.
Yeah, those permits are special use permits. So if there's something kind of beyond research, but it's a bigger event, or a something that you're not sure if it's allowed or not, at least reading up on what a special permit application looks like is helpful. And certainly, anytime if you have a question about any particular activity, if it's allowed or not, you can email. Our email account is sna.dnr@state.mn.us, and one of us would be able to answer questions, specific questions, if you have them.
Okay, and then I believe Cassie dropped a link, but the follow-up question was going to be, how do you get a permit or access to that?
Yeah, so you put the link to the research permit in there, and that's how you do it.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Carl asked, any chance to increase the acreage of an SNA or a new one?
Absolutely, that does happen. I just mentioned our Icelandic coastal fen is a new SNA on the North Shore, on Lake Superior. So that's a new site within the last year or so. Trying to think of a recent addition. I'm sorry, I'm going to turn away and look at my map on my wall. And Judy, if you
We
can think
made
of one.
additions, yeah. We are working on additions. They're not finalized yet, but we're working on additions to Corey Park and Felton Prairie, Ken River Turtle. So there's additions in the works, but they're not fully designated yet. So we're still working on that. But we are, yeah, we're pretty much always adding on or adding parcels. Not as many as you might see other public units doing, but that happens pretty regularly.
And if you have any ideas for us, of sites that could be added, we're always interested.
Great. Joan asked, what are some volunteer opportunities?
Oh, thanks for asking that question. We do a variety of activities throughout the year. We'll be gearing up to do some garlic mustard removal fairly soon here. As the summer progresses, we'll be doing other invasive removals such as knapweed, and a few other species. As we get into late summer and fall, we'll start doing seed collections, and those seed collections are done on sites that the seed is collected and then used on a restoration on the site or on a nearby SNA. Typically, that's how those seed collections are done. And then later in the fall, we work to manage buckthorn with volunteers as well. So we'll be doing some buckthorn removals in the fall. So throughout the year, there'll be plenty of opportunities. And if you just want to go visit an SNA and learn about the sites, we have some hikes on some of the sites, some wildflower walks. I think there's a frog walk coming up and a few different others. Or maybe the frog walk already happened, but there are other events like that throughout the year.
Great, thank you. And speaking along those lines, so I know that citizen science is a really important piece, and that's a lot of great information, and that gives people an opportunity to really make observations and do some of this like volunteer science work without having to maybe, make sure that the events align with their personal calendars. And so, could you speak a little bit more about like the BioBlitz events and how you
Sure.
submit an observation and what kind of observations people have been submitting?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So we do host at least one, I think this year we'll have two in-person BioBlitz events where we ask experts in the field to come out and help us to identify as many species as we can in all different kind, everything from last year I went on a hike with a spider expert to plants and all different kinds of animals. Um, and during those events, people can participate and help out those experts and do identifications of species that are found. Um, a couple of the tools that we use include iNaturalist. Our program does have a project for each one of our sites in iNaturalist, and we encourage people who are amateur botanists or amateur or even professional animal or plant specialists to make observations there. And we do gather that information, and we will be utilizing it. We've just recently within the last year updated our plant checklist for each site. And our intent is going forward to use iNaturalist and tools like that to help us update those lists. Another tool that we use is called EdMaps, and that's a tool for identifying and finding areas of invasive species, which is also important for us to know about. So if you're interested in finding, going out and helping us uh, know where invasive species are found on our sites, that's also a helpful tool for us. Um, did I get everything there? Did I miss something? I kind of went on.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it does look like you have both in-person and self-guided BioBlitz. So when you do the in-person BioBlitz, I know not everybody's familiar with like things tools like iNaturalist. So do you ever do like a training session in the in-person BioBlitz?
Yes, so we have actually we haven't done one for probably a year or two of an iNaturalist, like how to use iNaturalist, and certainly during the events we show people how to use those tools, and yeah, there's or you could, if you're interested in just going out and trying it out on your own, you're welcome to go out and give it a whirl as well. But yes, we would during a BioBlitz show people how to use the iNaturalist and EdMaps. So, but your question is good. We probably should have another just basic iNaturalist and EdMap like event to give people started to help people get started. Yeah.
Yeah, and then along the iNaturalist, are those the data that you've received, are those ever shared out, or can people that have been submitting, can they kind of see?
Yes, yeah. The information on iNaturalist is available to anyone to view and see what's been um, identified on the site. So that's definitely if you're not familiar, I think it's just inaturalist.org, and they have if you search for Minnesota Scientific and Natural Areas, you would find our project, and within that, then you could go to a site that you're interested in, and it would show you what's been found on those sites. And then, as I mentioned too, we're also working to take that information, the data from those observations, and then put them into a checklist plant checklist for each site. And most all of our sites currently have two checklists. They have a plant checklist of all the known at least known till now plants on the site, and then we also have bird checklists that we're doing the same process where we're using eBird, which is a similar to iNaturalist data. So again, citizen scientists who are interested in birding can go out to sites, identify the birds on the site, put that data into eBird, and we utilize that to create our bird checklists. As well as I should mention too that we have many experts within the department that have worked over several years to document the plants and animals on scientific and natural areas, and that's kind of the heart of the data that we use for building our checklists or talking about what plants and animals are found on our sites. So yeah, I probably should have mentioned that even first there. that work has been done over decades, and it's invaluable to us to know what's on our sites and where it is.
Okay, and the checklists are can be found on the website as well on each
Exactly.
SNA.
If you go to any particular one of the sites in the map or on the list of SNAs, you go to that site, it'll show you a list of or it'll show you a plant list and a checklist that you can look at.
Perfect. Jeff asked, are the letters or are the newsletters archived and can we view past newsletters?
Yes, if you go to our website again, there is a newsletter link, and that page shows the current issue, and then there's an archive of all of the newsletters that electronic newsletters we've done since I think 2012, I believe.
Okay, great. And then Janelle asks, how far out are the prairie chicken blinds booked out?
That's a good question.
That is a good question. So we don't actually do the prairie chicken blinds. The Nature Conservancy does. And I don't know if maybe DNR Wildlife does. So it's maybe a question we would have to follow up on. But
Yeah, I do think that they tend to reservations for them fill up pretty quickly. And if I remember correctly from previous years, at least with the Nature Conservancy's blinds, I think they start opening reservations kind of in the beginning of the calendar year, because this is the time when you're going out to view prairie chickens, and so it's probably too late for this year. I might also add there is a Prairie Chicken Society, and I was just on their website not very long ago. This is why it came to mind. They have a list of all of the blinds that are available, and I don't want to say this for sure, but if you go look at that website, um, there might be openings. I'm not sure though, but we could check back or check and get back to you.
Great. And Cassie did drop the link for the archive of the newsletter in the chat as well if you need that link.
Awesome.
Ryan asks, have either of you been to all of the SNAs in the state?
I'm probably the closest, I think, in our program, being I have just 5 left, but I don't know if I don't know if there might be somebody else in Minnesota that's been to all of them. I haven't heard yet. I'd love it if there was, and they could give me some advice on how to get to those last 5.
yeah, some of them are pretty tough to get to. I don't think anybody else in the unit's been to every single one.
I could, should I tell the story of like one of my adventures of getting to one? Do we have time?
Yeah, we
Oh,
do.
okay. So I had done a vacation up in the far northern reaches of the state, and I decided that I was going to try and get out to, it's our Luxembourg peatland SNA, and here's how I got to it. So I had been staying locally in the area, and so I drove county roads, gravel roads to a what had been at one time, I believe, a forest road, and I have a little car, and so I couldn't drive very far in. I probably drove a quarter of a mile to a spot where I felt this is as far as I can go. The road continued, so I decided I had my mountain bike with me that I would mountain bike as far as I could on this road. And I mountain biked about 2 miles to an intersection of 2 county ditches. And obviously it's not that easy to mountain bike through a ditch. So I left my bike there, and then I had to cross the ditch, and I was lucky that the beaver had dammed the area, and so I was able to cross the ditch, and I hiked at least another, I think it was either a half mile or a mile through wet peatland, wet open peatland to get to the actual boundary of the natural area. And then I had to do that all in reverse. It was pretty much a whole day to do that one SNA. So some of the sites you have to be fairly committed if you'd like to go visit them. But it was fun.
Thanks for sharing that. It does sound as like so maybe those those last fives, that's what's preventing you from visiting
Yeah.
them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The peatlands are tough. Like
They are.
we have a
Yeah.
lot of peatlands, and the peatlands are big, and they are tough to track and tough to get to. So,
Yeah.
but that's not
And
all
then,
our sites. That's the peatlands.
Yeah.
right. Lisa asked, will Cabbage Rocks ever become an SNA?
Is Cabbage Rocks down by Rochester? I'm, I know I've heard of it, but I'm not too familiar. Are you familiar with it, Judy?
It's not something we've talked about acquiring since I've been like working on the acquisition side um, of SNA, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been looked at in the past, but it's not something currently we're discussing.
Okay. And then Lewis asks, when visiting these areas, if we come across something interesting, can we contact you and send you pictures?
Absolutely. We encourage that. If you find something uh, that hasn't been found on a site before, whether it's a plant or animal, those are always exciting finds for us. If you have something interesting that you'd like to share and you'd be willing to share, we do have a social media account, a Facebook account. We could share your cool finds to others as well. And if you're finding, issues on a site, it's very helpful for our managers to know what's going on a site if you're finding something that shouldn't be there or that kind of thing. So definitely let us know. We appreciate it.
It's also probably a good time to put in a plug for our site steward program. So we do have volunteer site stewards. We try to have them for each of our sites, and we don't always have them for all our sites. So if you have interest in sort of, in a way, adopting an SNA to be a site steward of, check that out on our website too.
Yeah, and the commitment for a site steward typically is we're asking on a volunteer basis for uh, a person to go out and at least check the site once a quarter, once a month. Some of our stewards also get involved in some management work on the site. We have a few stewards who actually help do volunteer events. So the possibilities are fairly wide. It's just it's a matter of your interest matching that up with the site and what the needs are for that site. But it can be a very rewarding experience. I know we have stewards who've been with us for many, many years they do a lot of great work for us, and we very much appreciate having that sense of volunteerism here in Minnesota.
SNA really has a volunteer history. We started from volunteers. And so we've held that volunteer history throughout the whole life of 55 plus year life of the Scientific and Natural Areas program. So we definitely encourage, eyes and ears on the ground, letting us know what you're finding out, seeing out there. We like to hear from you, and we really count on the volunteer work that takes place on our sites.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to have really dedicated volunteers like that. Um, and then Judy, speaking of acquisition, so Ryan asked, what determines whether a site acquisition turns into an SNA or a wildlife management area?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we look at a lot of different factors, right? SNAs, we have pretty high standards as far as like it has to be native plant communities of a certain quality, dependent on rare features being present. It might be adjacency. So if something's adjacent to an SNA versus being adjacent to a wildlife management area, it could be like the landowner's wishes of the future recreational use of that land. So there's a lot of factors that go into which direction it goes. And I mean, there's a variety of ways it could go, right? It could go wildlife management area. It could go parks and trails. It could go scientific and natural areas. So there's a lot of different units. And then there's fee title sale, which would make it go towards being a public land, or there's conservation easements where it might stay in private ownership. So
Yeah, and maybe as a general rule here, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Judy, is like Judy, I think had mentioned earlier, like scientific natural is kind of the highest level of protection and probably the least variety of recreational uses. And then
mhm.
maybe a wildlife area, of course, Minnesota wildlife often need native habitats to survive, but there may be more of a hunting focus on wildlife area lands. State parks may be more recreational focus where you're able to, have uh, hiking and biking and snowmobiling and all of those kind of features. And state forests are kind of in there with large areas of native habitat. They're also utilized for lumber as well. So each type of unit, each type of state land unit has kind of a different focus on uh, what happens on the site, I guess, as far as recreation and what the site's used for, protection or use of the site for the natural resources. So.
Okay, and then Kathy does ask, is there a minimum or a maximum size for an SNA?
Well, I can tell you our smallest site is a 6-acre prairie in southern Minnesota, so that's quite small. Our largest site is the Red Lake peatland, which is over 87,000 acres. So they vary quite a lot, and what would depend on uh, uh, creating a new one would be is there enough of that habitat type to sustain itself over time. So some of the smaller sites, might be more difficult to maintain, might be a little more tricky to uh, preserve, but the larger sites are ones that are, they're wild. The Red Lake peatland is really a wilderness area. Yeah.
I I think too, like we have goals of protecting so many plant communities and rare features per like ecological subsection. So it might also depend on like have we already met that goal in that subsection or not?
Yeah.
Is this the best representative sample that we can get in this area? We fill out an entire like evaluation criteria that takes into account all different factors. So it's kind of hard if it seems like we're struggling to like summarize it. It's we look at a lot of different things when we're evaluating.
And just what Judy was mentioning about ecological subsections. So I early on in the presentation, I showed a map that showed 4 areas, the ecological provinces. So they're the prairies in the southwest, the deciduous forest in the middle strip in the middle of the state, and then the northern mixed forest. So there are smaller divisions of those called subsections, and that's what our program looks at to see, do we have representatives of the native habitats in those subsections to try and make sure that we're getting all of the different types of habitat across the state accounted for.
Great. Another question we have is drone footage recording allowed on SNAs?
So drones are something that I mentioned the special use permit earlier. If you're interested in doing drone work on a natural area, we'd ask that you apply for a special use permit to do that. What we would like if you were doing that kind of work would be that it would be tied to a research project that would help us learn more about the sites or a particular type of research on the site. That would be our preferred method for use of drones.
William asks, some species of concern are not formally protected within SNA sites. Do you prioritize certain threatened species that are not currently protected, or do you focus on protecting intact native plant communities?
I mean, we're looking at both, right? We will look at those special concern species that are not documented, or we maybe still need to meet those goals. And then we're also looking at the native plant communities. So I wouldn't say that they both have to be present. It's just all part of the evaluation.
Okay. Sabrina asks, the Lost 40 is such an amazing site. Highly recommend a visit. I saw quite a few large trees down when I was there last year. Are there concerns about any invasive species or pests causing irreversible damage to this special place? Anything that is being done to prevent further loss to this special place?
I don't believe at this time there are any invasive pests at Lost 40 that there are major concerns of that are outside the there's native pests that will but I don't believe right now there's anything that's of great concern. And there is work without trying to go too in depth. The Lost 40 is a forest type that is fire dependent. In his, um, Historically, fires would go through the site to I guess help manage it. I'm again trying to keep this simplified, but we are in the process of looking at options to do prescribed burn at the Lost 40 to help retain its health. What that could do there is help uh, um, for red pine to be in particular um, to get get the seed bank so that new seedlings can grow because they the red pines tend to grow in I'm probably overstepping my knowledge base here, but um, red pines need an more open canopy to sprout, and so there'll be an opportunity to help get that next generation of pines to grow on the site. Can you add anything or clarify for me, Judy?
You did a good job. I mean,
Okay.
without getting into the weeds and complications around trying to burn the Lost 40, right? Because it's going to be a very complicated a burn to try to do. I mean, ultimately that's the the thought process is like we need to somehow reintroduce fire, but it's going to be extremely complicated to do.
Yeah. And that's a site too where the site is a scientific and natural areas, but it's also part of the site is owned by the Chippewa National Forest. And so we have a partnership with the Chippewa National Forest to manage and utilize that site. So we do have good partners that will be able to help us to maintain the health of the site into the future. And you're right, it's a beautiful site. I'd recommend anybody going to visit there.
And you have to hug a tree. Our naturalists that gives a lot of, there's a rule that if you go to the Lost 40, you must hug a tree and preferably share it with us because we would like to see those.
Right. It may be an unwritten rule, but it's a rule.
Yeah, it's an unwritten rule.
Are you
Is that
winking,
on the
Judy?
website? Okay. Well, William asked, do you work with counties or cities that currently own high quality native plant communities and try to help them transition those parcels into SNAs?
We have what is called the Natural Area Registry program, which is part of our SNA unit. And the Natural Area Registry program is a recognition program that works with other county and city-owned lands to recognize them for their value, their scientific value, right? Um, we're kind of working currently in-house to look at that program and how we could revitalize that program because it needs a facelift. But that's been part of what's been done in the past. We have, acquired lands in the past from, DOT, from, colleges, from cities. It's not outside the realm of what we've done. But we're also looking at trying to, utilize that natural area registry program better in the future too.
Okay. Um, Susan asks, what are the differences between SNAs and prairie banks?
So prairie banks are privately owned. They're not open to the public. And what it is it's recognizing that there's high quality remnant, never plowed native prairie, and a lot of rare species on these private land landowners' lands. And then what we do is once they decide to enroll, if the landowner wants to enroll in an easement, we pay them for an easement. Conservation easements put on with stipulations and rules around how it's managed. And then they work with us going forward to manage those lands. So we have prairie stewardship plans, which are like management plans in place, and we help them manage it because rare plants and native prairie is extremely hard to manage for, and it takes a lot of knowledge. And so it's our way of being able to partner with private landowners to help them manage those lands and leave a legacy.
Yeah. And scientific and natural areas are the public side of that. So those are lands that are owned by the state, and most of them are open for public use. And for, as we mentioned with the scientific and natural areas, is that the intent is to preserve the native habitat on those sites. And those sites are prairies, woodlands, savannas, the Lost 40 pine forest. So it's all of the different variety of habitats that Minnesota has.
Yeah, and I would say like sometimes our prairie bank landowners end up selling to us in the end, and so we've been able to just really kind of work with them until they're ready to transfer ownership. And sometimes they don't, but a lot of times they have. So it's a great partnership. But yeah, they're not open to the public. Those are not.
Great. We have just about 3 minutes or so here, but we've talked a lot about the rare plant species and the importance of that. But I want to make sure we have a little bit of time for this, but people are also asking about the rare animal species that are found there. So two questions that we have in the Q&A are, Sabrina asked, what is the most unique animal that has been found in an SNA? And then B asks, are there any rare species or unique features that are not yet represented in an SNA or at SNAs?
Ooh, tough questions.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, we have some of the rarest. Well, here's an example. There is oh, it's a plant though. You wanted animals.
There's a new we just found what did Jessica find last year? A bee species that hadn't been found in Minnesota yet that was found on a prairie bank. Um, I can't remember, of course, the name of that bee species but off the top of my head, but so that's pretty neat that we just like it's a new one that we hadn't found in Minnesota prior to. But I'm trying to think what else is like really unique that we would have. I mean, we have I mean, pretty much representative samples of what you would expect to find, I guess.
I did think of one. There is a rare bird called the piping plover. It's
Mm.
only found in a couple areas in the whole state, and one of those couple of areas is the Pine and Curry Island SNA that I mentioned early on in the presentation. And in fact, I think one of the first slides I had was of a piping plover on the beach. That species is been found on Pine and Curry Island for many years. It waxes and wanes with the number of birds that are found there each year. It's where they go to nest in the summertime. And there have been years where no birds have nested, and other years where we've had a handful of birds nest. So that's probably one of the most one of the rarest things the habitat on SNAs help preserve.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
we've had to do some special work to get the nesting to continue to take place. And last year we were able to have two little hatchlings, so we were pretty excited about that last year.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Thank you, Kelly and Judy, for being here. We're out of time. And so thank you for sharing Minnesota's natural areas and how important these spaces are. Make sure to register for next week's episode. So episode 211, we will be doing a live webinar from our St. Paul Fish Hatchery with Genevieve Fertner, our DNR St. Paul Fish Hatchery supervisor. So make sure to take some time to get out to explore one of these scientific and natural areas, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.